Okay. So for today's agenda, we're going to start chapter 3, the self, and we'll try to finish this first subtitle, which is the cognitive self. Okay. So self-concept. This is a knowledge representation that contains knowledge about ourselves, including our personality traits, our physical characteristics, our abilities, our values, etc. So now I want you to give me a quick example for each one. Should be pretty simple. And online students, you can just type your response here. Friendly, very good. So friendly is a personality trait, very good. Outgoing, very good. What about you guys?
I'm short.
Short, so that's a physical characteristics, right? What else? Blonde hair, that's physical characteristics, very good. Anything else about abilities?
I'm good at playing piano.
Playing piano? Very good. So abilities. What else? Should be pretty simple. Yeah.
Could it be like I can tie my shoes?
Yeah. That's an ability too. Oh, so music, artist, I'm a runner. Okay, values. I value hard work. Very good. I like that. What about you guys? What kind of values do you have? Yeah.
I value family.
Family. Very good. Very good. So those are very good examples. So those could all be your self-concept. All right. So the development of the self as human, from 18 to 24 months, we start to recognize ourselves in the mirror. If you read the textbook, you will see that human, we are different from most animals. Because a lot of animals, they cannot recognize themselves when they see the mirror. I don't know how true that is. It's just like, how do you know whether the animals have the concept of the mirror? And it's just hard to tell, but that's the general idea, is that human is different and we can recognize ourselves in the mirror at a very young age. So from 24 months or above, so 2 years old, we become aware of our gender identity. When we get to 4 years old, we start to focus on our self-physical features, like the examples that we had. You might notice that you're blonde. You might notice that your skin color is different from your friend. What else? You might notice that you're a little bit taller than your brother or your sister. All of that. And when we get to 6 years old, that's when we start to focus on emotions and personality traits. That's when we start to express a lot of our emotions. Like, I'm happy today, or I'm not happy today. And your parents teach you to be a generous kid, or be friendly to your brothers and sisters. And you would be like, okay, I need to do that. Any questions on this? We good? Okay, so pay attention to like this critical stages. You don't need to memorize them. However, keep that in mind when we do the next class discussion. So we know that some of the parents are raising their children as babies. How many of you know what babies is? Kind of. So it's a, oh, you want to explain?
It's like, isn't that when they like raise them like gender neutral, so they don't like tell them they're a boy or a girl?
Yes, yes. Very good explanation. So they, nowadays they have this parenthood method is to let the kids to choose their gender. I'm trying to be neutral here. So they will call their children babies, and they're not gonna use any gender pronouns, and then they're not teaching them any idea, any concept about genders. And I want you to think about whether that's good or bad. What's the pros and cons in this? I'm gonna show you a video to explain this a little bit more. And meanwhile, you can think about this. Also, remember like the critical stages about when you develop your identity, your gender identity, and just think about this. All right.
Are we a normal family? We have 2 kids, order Domino's for dinner sometimes.
Right, I'm ready to go.
In many ways, we fit the normal stereotype. Our kids, Kaden and Tyler, are 3.5 years old, and we're raising them using they, them, their gender-neutral pronouns so that they can decide for themselves when, if, and how they want to identify as a gender.
Before I continue, I just want to let everyone know that in this classroom, please don't worry too much about like whether you're politically correct or whether this is acceptable nowadays, or just think about this based on your personal experience, based on your values, based on your knowledge, what you have learned in psychology, in any other subjects. Because sometimes being politically correct doesn't help us to open up discussions, right? So just keep that in mind and don't be constrained by the idea, oh, I don't want to express my opinion because I would get attacked or something like that. We're not going to do that here. Everyone can have their own opinion, and we can disagree. Again, I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the class. We can disagree with each other, but we respect each other. Right? So, okay.
So I think that knowing the sex or the gender of your child is important to other people, partially just because it's part of the social script. They don't notice that they're any different from any other children because they have no idea that some children are she and some children are he.
All right.
To them, they're all children. So like they don't notice any difference, and the other kids that they're with don't notice any difference. A lot of young girls are, when they grow up, they're told, you know, don't get dirty, don't do that, that's not safe, be careful, those kinds of things. And then they grow up and think that they're not capable of doing all these things. And then the young boys are told, oh, don't cry, you're okay, be strong. And then they aren't comfortable having emotions, which can cause a lot of problems when they're older. Gender is not something that we have discussed with either of them at all, really.
We're as nervous about that as most parents are about like how a baby's made.
They haven't really asked about it, so we're waiting until that question comes up. I think we're just kind of gonna wing it a little bit when we get there. But you know, telling them that, you know, gender is something that's fluid, and you know, a lot of people have penises, identify as being boys, but that's not something that is necessary if you feel like you're a girl, and vice versa.
There is research that shows when you use gender binaries in our language, when we say good morning, boys and girls, or when we just say to our kids, come on, girls, or what a smart boy you are, using gender to sort and categorize and label kids. We do know that that increases gender stereotypes.
Do you want the hair clip in your hair? Do you help or are you gonna do it yourself? You did it. As a result of raising our kids as babies, I'm hoping that they'll grow up and be supportive of other people and who they are and how they feel, and really confident and happy in who they are themselves.
Okay, that's it. Alright. Tell me what you think. So online students, I'm going to open a breakout room for you guys and see. Oh, okay. Some people are already sharing. I'm gonna read this to you guys later, just so that you're not biased. Wait, where's the breakout room? Okay. You can discuss among yourselves, or you can just raise your hand and express your opinion. It's more like a seminar style today. I want to give you more time to interact, because I know sometimes you give me the feedback saying that you don't have enough time to socialize with each other. That's why people don't speak up. So I'm going to do that today. Feel free to talk to each other or talk to me.
There are a lot of negative gender stereotypes, and if they're not bad themselves, they like limit.
I feel like it's one of the crucial things, like a way for you to express yourself when you are aware of your gender, whatever suit you choose. And I totally get, like, if you're fine with your child changing their gender as they get older, then why not raise them like as they biologically are? And then, you know, if they're 14 and they come to you and they're like, oh, blah, 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 this is what's been going on, then you deal with that then. But, like, I feel like there's some...
You guys go ahead. I'm just joining.
No, I agree. Negative
Negative side effects.
Oh, you guys go ahead.
Like, as a label
I'm just
of
joining the
nothing.
room.
Then, like, you're kind of labeled as, and that's not...
Oh, you guys,
necessarily, like,
online
a
students, you can
like,
continue your
okay,
discussion. I'm just trying to
I know
interact
that's
with
not-
both
I
sides
express
of the
myself,
classroom.
I identify as female.
What were you saying?
I identify as male.
I was
And
just
act
saying I'm
all
kind
kinds
of torn between
We're all
the
labels
ideas
that help us
because
identify
I'm trying,
ourselves.
I
And
see
feel
like their
you need to
intentions going into it,
security
but I
and
just
knowing
don't
who you
know
are.
the negative side
I don't
effects
know
that
if I
it'll
could
have
deal with
on them in the
not
future.
knowing.
So it's like hard for me to decide whether this is something that is good for them or bad, because I do see the consequences. I think that it's gonna end up eventually being more negative. Like, they have a good idea, but what's gonna happen is, you know, kids are gonna come up to them like in their preschool days and say, "Are you a boy or a girl?" And they're gonna be like, "What?" So I think it's gonna cause them to be alienated, and then when they grow older, they might experience a bit of gender dysphoria because they don't know what they are. They never had that concept. So I think in the long, like, it's good intentions, but again, in the long run, I think it's not gonna work out.
Yeah, I think in our society, like, I think like at least some sort of gender identity, like when you're young, is like super important.
But then they tell them, if we feel something
But honestly, like, I support parent style where like you start off with like your
Because that's how I feel like most
gender that you think they're gonna identify as, but if they identify as something
what's right and wrong,
then
because if they tell them being selfish is wrong,
what they, you know.
Yes,
someone
I
would
agree
argue
with
that,
that,
oh,
right.
I want to raise my kid to be more selfish and look out for themselves better. But it's like, you're still raising your kid in a certain way. And then once they're older, once they're an adult, or even once they reach that like, age where they can start reasoning for themselves, it's most
The thing is, they're like trying not to instill the gender stereotypes in them when they're young. Like, guys not being on promotions, girls need to play with the princesses, girls need to be more submissive. Like, I think that labels give us like structure to like know who we are. And so I think maybe a
Yeah.
good way to do it would be like, you're a girl, but like when we go pick out toys, like lots of girls like
Exactly.
toys,
Yeah.
but like all these toys are your option. All can be like that, you know?
Or with male showing emotion, like you can easily raise your child as a male, but let them know that it's okay to show emotion.
Yes, I can mute myself. I don't know if I can. I'll just leave. I'll just leave the room, and then you guys continue. And then I'll come back in and then tell you when to leave the room.
I feel like there's just like a better way to like avoid like gender stereotypes, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like whenever you're raising a child like that, you're kind of confusing them more.
Yeah.
That's kind of always been my thought on it, especially like if they go to school, that might alienate them because a lot of the kids don't have the like capacity to understand
Yeah.
like that.
Like I was thinking, like if you raise your kids like that, you have to be able to afford to go to like a little private school.
Yeah, I mean,
It's very,
like,
like,
homeschooling,
yeah, you know, like
like,
you can't just like
that.
send them to like public school. You know, like,
Yeah, I mean, because like even in public school, like
Yeah.
there was always like a boys and a girls restroom.
Yeah,
Like everywhere
like
you go,
sports
that's
and
how it's
stuff. Like we
Yeah.
have to like specifically arrange every part of your child's life to like align with that. Which like if you have the resource to do that and you want to do that, I guess that could be feasible, but it would be a lot harder.
No, but I think you're right. I think that it does kind of isolate them because they may, I mean, like if it's a biological boy and then later they decide they're a girl, like for the first part of their life, they're just going to feel isolated because they can't identify as anything.
Yeah.
So they can't fit in like with boys or girls because they don't know what
Because there's
they
labels
are.
attached with anything, and of course, it sounds like they're fine with their children attaching other labels on themselves, you know, if they want to label themselves as athletic or physical characteristics or like the abilities or the values we talked about. And so it's like, I feel like in one sense, you could just raise them with that label. If they choose to change it later, just like if you put your child in sports growing up and they didn't really enjoy it, then at a certain age you tell you I don't enjoy sports. And then of course some parents don't force the kids to do it. Then it's like, okay, let's find something else you're interested in. And I feel like that's what we do with everything else. And I feel kind of like that's the way it should be.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest difference can be when you're like teaching them and not labeling
And I just think it's less.
Because like even like saying that their kids are like they, them,
It's still
they're-
putting a label.
Yeah, it's like it's
by
still putting a label on
giving
them. But if they
non-label.
teach them like be open, like you can choose, like this is the difference.
Also, I don't know, you understand the name babies because babies is already not
Yeah.
I always have to
I
like
was thinking
whenever
about
people
that.
choose like names and things like that. I was like, that's not necessary.
Like that's just not how it works.
Oh, okay. Howdy.
Yeah, I was like, I think that it's good what they're trying to do.
Howdy.
It's better. Yes, exactly.
Thank you. So I know it can be a little bit controversial. So online students, if you feel like you can chip in during the discussion, please just type here and then I'll tell you when to unmute yourself and then we can all discuss. So now I want you guys to tell me what you think. As a group or as individual, doesn't matter. I just want to hear your thoughts. Yes.
We were saying that like there are bad gender stereotypes, and even if they're not necessarily bad, like maybe we would be open to more things if we didn't think that they didn't apply to us. Like little girls wanted to play with like the truck toy instead of the princess, but it's hard because people gravitate to like labels to be able to fit in with other groups and be able to define themselves because it makes things easier. And so we were saying maybe there's like a middle ground between completely gendering everything and then gendering nothing, but just being like, you know, you're a girl or you're a boy, but that doesn't mean you have to do these things. There are other options, and most people do this thing, but you can still do the other thing.
Okay, so that's what you think people should do. But what's the pros and cons of doing this, like raising your kids as babies and you don't tell them anything about their gender identities? Go ahead.
I think they have the right intentions for like supporting gender fluidity and everything.
Oh,
But
one second. I'm sorry. I don't know if the online students heard what you said. And that was long, I cannot remember what you said. So online students, if you cannot hear, put it on the, oh, so you did hear, right? Okay, good. So try to speak a little bit louder so that online students can hear as well. If they cannot hear, I'll try to repeat the big idea. All right, continue, sorry.
Okay, so they had the right idea with raising people, like supporting gender fluidity, but I also think that they could give them a gender and say like you're a boy, you're a girl, but just raise them with the values of, you know, you can support other people or you can do it yourself. You know?
Yeah.
You can be gender fluid yourself. You don't
Yeah.
have to like see this different.
So you agree with her?
Yeah.
Kind of, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. You still didn't tell me the pros and cons. All right. Don't be afraid to say it. If you don't think this is good or you think this is good, just express your opinion. You don't have to like be vague about it. I think you're next.
So we're saying like the pros of it would be like, it's good that you're like promoting that they're like not having to be like stereotyped one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we felt like you're kind of like confusing the kids more than anything because you're like not giving them a label at all.
Mm.
And labels are a big part of how we like understand ourselves
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
feel like, you know, secure like in our identities.
Mm-hmm.
So especially if you send them to like public school or something,
Yeah.
like they may end up being very isolated from the other kids because like the girls want to play with each other usually and the boys usually
Yeah.
want to play with each other and they don't
Mhm.
know where they fit into that.
Very good. So that's very realistic because that's the minority. Not everyone's doing this to their kids, right? So when they go to school, when they socialize with other kids might not have the same idea, and then they're gonna get ostracized by nature, and they might not have a good environment. Very good, very good. I think you're next, and then you.
Oh, I would send her.
Oh,
there.
same thing?
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, I was thinking something. About the. I kind of forgot.
You forgot. You lost your train of thought.
Yeah.
It'll come back.
Yeah.
All right. What else? Online students. Oh, Madison has an opinion. Go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Okay, so my only concern with
Hold on. 1 second. I'm gonna make it louder. Okay, go ahead.
My only concern was it with also like their sexuality when they see their body parts and how that may cause confusion because I feel like growing up we have a norm of like what you're not supposed to do to a girl and what you're not supposed to do to a boy. And I feel like if that's mixed in between, maybe it could cause like sexual maturity at a younger age when there shouldn't be one. But that was my thought process going into it in terms of the sexuality aspect. So I thought that would be a con of it.
Okay, so that would be a con. So can you explain why develop sexuality at an early age is a con? Can it be a pro?
I feel like it would be a con because your mind isn't necessarily developed fully, so engaging in sexual activity like on an early age could cause you to do those sexual behaviors.
Okay. I think I misunderstood you. I thought sexuality means like they understand the difference between man and woman and how like just how biology works. But you're more referring to
like
sexual activities.
Yes.
That's a good point, but I don't know. So if you have taken cognitive psychology, or developmental psychology, I don't think at that age they are able to comprehend that. But I'm not 100% sure. All right, very good. So you think, yeah, I agree. If it's sexual activity, of course, it's a con. Okay, very good. All right. So right now we hear a lot of cons. If you think this is good, you have a opinion saying, okay, this is actually good for the babies. You can also express your opinion. You might be the minorities, but don't worry. Just express anything. that's in your mind. And if you also think there's cons and that you have a different opinion, feel free to chip in too. Yeah, all opinions are welcome.
Were you asking for pros?
Well,
I didn't understand.
I'm not, yeah, so I'm just saying, so sometimes, when we engage in discussion, and then when you hear majority of the people are saying, like agreeing with each other, if you have something that you don't disagree, you're less likely to voice up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily asking to play the devil's advocate. Just if you don't think there's pro, don't make up one. But if you do think there's pro, please speak up.
I think a pro is that like we over gender things that don't have any need to have a gender, like colors or objects. Like nothing about a truck is inherently related to boys, or pink is related to girls. Like we just kind of make up a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And so if we could just like make that part more fluid, but not necessarily have to like make you not identify with being a girl or a boy, and that could open up a lot more opportunities, and maybe people discover things that they actually like but didn't think that they could explore that because it didn't relate to them.
Yeah, very good. Very good. All right, so seems like you guys are pretty quiet, so I guess that's most of your opinions, and you either agree or you don't want to speak up. Do you want to hear my opinion, or you want me to stay out of it so that you can have your own thoughts? If you want to hear my opinion, okay. So everyone in the class wants to hear it. Okay. So here we have another one. Sandy says being raised gender neutral could give them a new perspective and will give them a greater sense of empathy, because the parents have a strong connection with their children. It could help with school and supporting them emotionally. Not all children are mean. Yes. They're not mean, but they are selfish. That's the truth. They are egocentric. Their brain are not developed enough to consider other people yet. When you ask them about questions, they're gonna use themselves as the anchor, if you remember the bias. They are not capable of this higher mental capacity yet. And even adults, a lot of them are selfish. They just can't empathize. So yes, I agree with you that not all children are mean. Regardless, I think this small community is start to discovering whether this works or not. Yes, agree. So it is a start of a new thing. Honestly, I don't think anyone knows for sure this is gonna be 100% good for the kids or 100% bad for the kid. I agree with you. But I would not agree that children would not get treated differently in school for having a very different opinion. Just because most children, they're selfish. Yeah. Okay. Good thoughts. So for online students, I can't really see everyone's hand. So if you don't want to hear my opinion, just mute it. If you do, just leave it on. So in my opinion, the reason that I want you to, hold on. The reason I want you to keep this in mind is that people start to develop their gender identity around 2 years old, right? And how do you think that start to develop that idea? If you don't talk about it, there's no way that they can learn this. right? This might delay to 4 years old or 6 years old when they go to kindergarten or school, and then they finally realize, oh, there's this huge thing that I should have known. So that's one thing that I think there's a huge con in this, is like what you said, it might cause confusion. They're not going to have a very stable identity for themselves. And you know, the lack of identity, it's a big problem, and it can lead to a lot of the mental disorders in the future. And you know, there's a ton of personality disorders, right? So that's one thing that I don't like this method. It doesn't mean that I forbid people to do it. People do whatever they want. It's just I think there's cons to this. Another thing is you're letting a kid to decide their gender at such a young age. Do you think they can really make that decision? It's kind of hard, right? It's like you're making a 6-year-old to say, I don't know, killing is it good or bad? Can you kill people? But without telling them what killing is and what does it mean to that being, right? They don't have any concept about the gender. And let's think of a different example. When you don't have any background knowledge and then you need to make that decision, I don't know how that's gonna work, right? I just don't think you can make a wise decision when you don't have a lot of background ideas. So that's my thoughts. You can disagree with me, and you're welcome to discuss this with me after class. So yeah, that's just my thoughts. Yes?
So if like you don't develop one of those things at the right times, like gender identity, does that delay the other things afterwards?
I don't think so. I don't think so. So let's say you don't know your gender, but you can still know that you're blonde or you have black hair. You can still know that you are happy or not happy. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly. So personality traits. Those are relatively enduring set of behaviors, feelings, thoughts, and motives that categorize an individual. So they're generally stable and consistent across situations and time. For example, if you're friendly, you're usually friendly around people and around other people. If you're shy across time, across situations, and if you're talkative, it's pretty consistent and stable. Unless it's like so extreme that you go to a different country and then everyone's different, the culture is different, this might change, but generally this is pretty stable and consistent. So I want to ask you, personality traits, are they shaped by nature or nurture? Both. Very good, very good. So usually when you get this question, it's both. So we have evolution, we have genetics, and we have culture. So I found this picture online, and I noticed there's no Asian in this picture. I just typed in diversity. So I did this. All right, now it's good. All right, so evolution. How do you think evolution changed or shaped our personality traits? I don't think we have a ton of time to discuss. If you have any opinion, just speak up. Yeah?
Making us more social.
Social. Why evolution will make us more social?
Like, because a long time ago, it was more like fend for yourself, but then as like communities develop and there's more need to be social and interact with others.
I'm gonna put words in your mouth, but I think that's what you mean. So evolutionary wise, you're more likely to survive when you have a community. And then that's why you're more likely to collaborate with people and be more social, and then you're more likely to survive, and then you pass your genes to your kids, and then they're gonna survive, and then they're gonna collaborate. But the people who are alone, they don't like to collaborate, they don't like to social, they might die off. So evolution, is that what you mean?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah,
I thought
kinda.
I read somewhere that like I guess caveman times or something, like they were more like inclined to like fend for themselves and
Yeah.
care for themselves. Like they weren't like
Mhm.
looking for that community. They weren't inclined to, but then like people became more so, like you were saying,
Mhm.
because it helped them.
Yeah, because I think at first, collaborating takes more work than being yourself in the short run, right? If you find food, you can just eat it yourself, and now you need to share it with your friends. In the long run, it's just better that way. So that's why what I was saying, like evolution kind of filters out the people who doesn't want to collaborate. All right, so genetics. So genetics. Example will be you behave like your father and your mother, even though you're raised in a different culture. So that's how we know, okay, genetics might play a role in personality traits. Culture will be something like you behave like everyone else in your environment instead of your parents. So this will show that your personality traits can be shaped by the culture. Can you think of any study, like what kind of study can people do to distinguish this, to tease apart different variables? Yes?
You could look at kids who had like been adopted, because then you would have an idea about their genetics and about their new culture.
Very good. So look at adopted kids. So they're not genetically connected with their parents, but you want to see. You're very close. How can you make this design a little bit better? Yes?
Twin studies.
Very good, very good. Is that what you? Yes. So twin studies. You can have identical twins, and then they have the same genetics, and you put them in different environments and raise them differently, see if they behave differently. There's this infamous study in the U.S. It's about three identical brothers. They didn't know each other until they were in college. Do you know that case? If you don't, there's a movie about this. It's very interesting, but highly unethical. People have done like crazy shit. So if you're interested, look into that. It's pretty fun. Okay, social identity. Those are the sense of our ourselves that involves our memberships in social groups. That's a typo. I'm going to change that before I post the note. Some examples will be like, I'm a student, I'm an Asian, I'm a baller, so those will be my social identity. All right? So social identity is also influenced by culture. And here's an activity, is that there are 20 questions. You need to fill out this form and then say, I am what. So they did this experiment. If you're interested, you can do this on your own. But it's gonna be biased after I tell you the results. You can do this on your friends or your family members. What they found is that for Eastern participants, they're more like collectivism. They are different from Western participants. Their answers are different. Specifically, I think it's also in your textbook, is that Asian participants tend to reference themselves as part of a group. For example, they will say, I am the only child of my family, or I am an A.M. student. I don't know. I'm trying to find good examples. But for Western students, they're more likely, or participants, they're more likely to say individual stuff like, I'm a student, instead of saying I'm a student at A&M, or I am a basketball player. instead of saying I am part of the team, like I'm on this basketball team. Does that make sense? So I don't know how true this is, and also this study was done a while ago, like 20, 30 years ago. So if you're interested in this, you can do your own little experiment. So social identities, they can also influence our behaviors. So Kim and Marcus, they did this study back in 1999. You don't need to remember the name and the year. Is that they found Asian participants, they tend to pick the more common pen, which is the black one. And then Western participants, they are more likely to pick the unique pen because in here, in the US, people always have this idea when they grow up, and parents will tell them, you're special, like you're a special snowflake, you're different from everyone else, which is different from the Asian culture. They'll be like, you need to listen to your friends, listen to your teachers, and socialize. So this is the difference. People here, they prefer stand out a little bit more than Eastern culture. I'm not saying that every single person is like that. I'm just describing the big picture, big culture. All right. Any questions so far? We good? Pretty straightforward, right? Okay, next we have the self-awareness. This is the extent to which we are currently fixing our attention on our own self-concept. So it might seem a little bit abstract, but when I give you this example, it will be easier to understand. So the example will be the spotlight effect. Anyone knows the spotlight effect? Yes?
It means that you think more people are basically paying attention to what you're doing than actually are.
Yes, very good, very good. So this happens very often when you are on your first day to school. You think that people are looking at you or people are paying attention to you. In reality, they might not. Also, for example, when you do presentations, you think that, oh, everyone is looking at me, and then they're paying attention to what I look like, my tone. And in reality, people don't care as much. So that's the spotlight effect. Those examples will be when you heighten your self-awareness. You are focused on yourself more. Okay. Next, we have the individualization. That's the loss of individual self-awareness and individual accountability in groups. We have 4 minutes, right? Am I correct? Okay, good. So one example would be rioting. If I ask you to destroy people's car and people's stores right now, you're not likely to do it, right? However, if I tell you, everyone's doing it, you should do this, and then when you blend in, when you lose your self-identity or your self-awareness, you are behaving like what the group is. You're more likely to behave differently. Does that make sense? Okay. So I wanted to have this discussion as well because it's relevant. Right now we have a lot of protests and then a lot of them become violent. And I want you to think about how to how to de-escalate rioting and the individualization. We don't have enough time to talk about this, but this is in your textbook. You can just go back and look at it. So what they think is that labeling rioters as mindless and thugs will not address the underlying cause of the riots. So they're not talking about the problems. So just say that they're mindless and thugs, it might not help. Also, the indiscriminate or disproportionate. Come on, I can't pronounce today. Use of force by police will often lead to an escalation of the right behavior. And you might see that right now. Law enforcement personnel should only target illegal and inappropriate behaviors. So they mean that you should allow for peaceful protests. They can express their opinions. Police officers should communicate their intentions to crowds before using force. So those are the ideas from the textbook. I don't know how well this is researched, and it's also back in 2011. That's why I wanted to have you guys discuss. Can you think of any better ideas? And then we have cognitive dissonance for 1 minute. So this is the feeling of self-discrepancy between our actual self and our ideal selves. One example would be you want to be a peaceful person, but you engage in a violent protest. Or you want to eat healthy, but you ate a McDonald's. That would cause cognitive dissonance. Self-affirmation, that's a method of reducing cognitive dissonance by affirming one's worth in another domain. Let's say you engage in this riot, you feel bad about it, so you donated money to homeless children in the world. It makes you feel better. This is just a method to reduce your cognitive dissonance. In reality, it's just like your bias and your illusion. Okay. Any questions? We good? All right, we're right on time. So reminders, work on your assignments together, even after class. Also, if you notice your group members are not contributing, you can just take notes, and then at the end, we have this evaluation within the groups. And also ask questions early. If you have questions about your study design, ask early instead of late, because it will be more work for you. All right, that's it.